The Judicial Service Commission is this week set to interview candidates nominated by President Cyril Ramaphosa for the position of Deputy Chief Justice. The interviews are scheduled to take place in Johannesburg today and tomorrow. Among those shortlisters is Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo. Watching developments is senior SABC News reporter Natasha Phiri, who joins us now live from Johannesburg. And Natasha, this particular position has been vacant for a while now.
It was vacant since last year in September, when Chief Justice Mandisa Maya actually assumed a position to the apex of the judiciary. You mentioned a number of candidates that are actually vying for this position. You mentioned the Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, who is going to be interviewed today, alongside the Free State Judge President Kagni Mosi and the Northern Cape Judge President Ule Tlaletsi. Remember, there was another candidate who was also nominated, and that was the Supreme Court of Appeal Justice Mahube Molemela, who actually withdrew. But let's just speak to a better mind who's here at the Santon Hotel, who will unpack the importance of this process and, you know, just the advantages and the disadvantages of these candidates. Begazeli, thank you so much for joining us on SABC News. Quite a very interesting time. I personally cannot wait, for the interviews to actually start. You penned, a very, very nice piece on all three candidates. Perhaps just give us the highlights.
Yeah, well, I think it's a tough one, right? One would have assumed that it would be an obvious decision by the president and he would pick one, but he decided to pick four. As you mentioned, one of them withdrew. The three candidates that are up for Deputy Chief Justice right now are very strong candidates. Each one of them is the head of court, which is a senior leadership role in the judiciary, and each one of them on average have 20 years of experience, and so they are familiar with the judiciary and how it functions. I think the key differentiation between them is the extent of their responsibilities. We know that Judge Mlambo runs the busiest High Court division in the country, and so that does give him an edge over the other candidates in terms of the level of experience that he's had managing a big court, managing a complex court with many moving parts. Judge Mosi as well himself, he's the only candidate who's actually gone through the ranks. He started off as a magistrate and now he's a judge president, and so one could say he has a bottom-up approach to the judiciary, which will actually give him an advantage if he does get the Deputy Chief Justice position, because then he would be able to hit the ground running and build and bring in all the different constituents. Judge Tlaletsi, he is a little bit at a disadvantage compared to the other candidates in terms of the size of the court that he manages, but he, quite early on in his role as Judge President, he took on leadership positions in the broader judiciary at national level. And so that would have given him some insight into how the judiciary functions. Again, the key issue in all of these are, to what extent are they able to coalesce around the vision of the Chief Justice? To what extent are they able to support the role of Chief Justice Maya? Because ultimately, the Deputy Chief Justice is supposed to be the second in command. They're supposed to run the Constitutional Court and also support the Chief Justice in their responsibility.
Because as much as you highlight, the good, there's also the bad. I just read through your notes as well that in regards to Mlambo, age isn't on his side, but also, there's some people actually, had lodged complaints against him as well.
Yeah, I think the age issue is obviously something we cannot run away from. He retires in 2029, which in some ways the JSC would look at it and say, what's the point of appointing someone who's so close to retirement? But the advantage of it is that he will likely retire at the midpoint of Chief Justice Maya's term. And that means anyone who comes in will almost automatically then be groomed for the position of Chief Justice. So there's a strategic advantage there. But you're quite right, Judge Mlambo, because he's the leader of the North Gauteng High Court, which deals with a lot of the political cases, he's unfortunately been the face of some of the political attacks that we've seen over the years. And that might put him at a disadvantage. Like you said, there have been numerous complaints that have been filed against him. There hasn't been any that has gone forward, meaning that there haven't been any that have been substantial. But it is something that the JSC will likely probe with him. Judge Mosi, he's kept his powder quite clean, so he doesn't have any controversy. The one issue against him is that it was that New Lane case that was recently overturned by the Supreme Court of Appeal. So there will be questions about his decision-making to allocate a high-profile case to an acting judge and whether that was the best use of judgment. And so that's something that's there. We mentioned earlier Judge Tlaleti, he runs a smaller division, so that might count against him.
Migazeli, I think just out of interest, for a person who's watching us from home, yes, you've highlighted the importance of this position, that they are actually deputy, to the Chief Justice. But why should the broader public actually take interest in, such processes?
Look, we should take an interest because the judiciary affects all of us, unfortunately. The decisions that are taken by the courts affect us, whether we have a business, whether we have a family, anything. If you ever get in trouble with the law, you want to have an independent and strong judiciary, and so you want the Chief Justice, the Deputy Chief Justice to be strong leaders. And particularly over the last 3 weeks, President Ramaphosa has announced that the judiciary will now become its own independent institutions. That has fundamentally transformed the role of the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice. They will take on a much greater responsibility, and that is something that I'm hoping the JSC today will probe, because depending on who they appoint, that will make or break the judiciary going forward. And so we all should take an interest, we should all care, because it ultimately affects all of us.
Mbegezeli Benjamin, thank you so much for your wonderful insights. Thank you. Of course, Ayanda Mbegezeli Benjamin, just unpacking what we can expect, and also just, highlighting advantages, the disadvantages, the negatives and the positives of all these three candidates that will be interviewed over the next, 2 days.